Washington's fourth annual message to Congress, Senate Chamber of Congress Hall, Philadelphia, November 6, 1792. Fellow citizens of the Senate and the House of Representatives, it is some abatement of the satisfaction with which I meet you on the present occasion, that in facilitating you on a continuance of the national prosperity generally, I am not able to add to it information that the Indian hostilities which have for some time past distressed our northwestern frontier have terminated. You will, I am persuaded, learn with no less concern than I communicated that reiterated endeavors toward effecting a pacification have hitherto issued only in new and outrageous proofs of preserving hostility on the part of the tribes with whom we are in contest. An earnest desire to procure tranquillity in the frontier, to stop the further effusion of blood, to arrest the progress of expense, to forward the prevalent wish of the nation for peace, has led to strenuous efforts through various channels to accomplish these desirable purposes. In making which efforts I consulted less my own anticipations of the event, or the scruples which some considerations were calculated to inspire, than the wish to find the object attainable, or if not obtainable, to ascertain unequivocally that such is the case. A detail of the measures which have been pursued, and of their consequences, which will be laid before you, while it will confirm to you the want of success thus far, I trust, evince that means as proper and as efficacious as could have been devised have been employed. The issue of some of them, indeed, is still depending, but a favorable one, though not to be despaired of, is not promised by anything that has yet happened. In the course of the attempts which have been made, some valuable citizens have fallen victims to their zeal for the public service. A sanction commonly respected even among savages has been found in this instance insufficient to protect from massacre the emissaries of peace. It will, I presume, be duly considered whether the occasion does not call for an exercise of liberality toward the families of the deceased. It must add to your concern to be informed that, besides the continuation of hostile appearances among the tribes north of the Ohio, some threatening symptoms have of late been revived among some of those south of it. A part of the Cherokees, known by the name of Chickamaugas, inhabiting 5 villages on the Tennessee River, have long been in the practice of committing depredations on the neighboring settlements. It was hoped that the Treaty of Holston, made with the Cherokee Nation in July of 1791, would have prevented a repetition of such depredations, but the event has not answered this hope. The Chickamaugas, aided by some banditti of another tribe in their vicinity, have recently perpetrated wanton and unprovoked hostilities upon the citizens of the United States in that quarter. The information which has been received on this subject will be laid before you. Hitherto defensive precautions only have been strictly enjoyed and observed. It is not understood that any breach of treaty or aggression whatsoever on the part of the United States or their citizens is even alleged as a pretext for the spirit of hostility in this quarter. I have reason to believe that every practicable exertion has been made, pursuant to the provision by law for that purpose, to be prepared for the alternative of a prosecution of the war in the event of a failure of pacific overtures. A large portion of the troops authorized to be raised have been recruited, though the number is still incomplete and pains have been taken to discipline and put them in condition for the particular kind of service to be performed. A delay of operations, besides being dictated by the measures which were pursuing towards a pacific termination of the war, has been in itself deemed preferable to immature efforts. A statement from the proper department with regard to the number of troops raised and some other points which have been suggested will afford more precise information as a guide to the legislative consultation, and among other things will enable Congress to judge whether some additional stimulus to the recruiting service may not be advisable. In looking forward to the future expense of the operations which may be found inevitable, I derive consolation from the information I receive that the product of the revenues for the present year is likely to supersede the necessity of additional burthens on the community for the service of the ensuing year. This, however, will be better ascertained in the course of the session, and it is proper to add that the information alluded to proceeds upon the supposition of no material extension of the spirit of hostility. I cannot dismiss the subject of Indian affairs without again recommending to your consideration the expediency of more adequate provision for giving energy to the laws throughout our interior frontier, and for restraining the commission of outrages upon the Indian, without which all pacific plans must prove nugatory. To enable, by competent rewards, the employment of qualified and trusty persons to reside among them as agents would also contribute to the preservation of peace and good neighborhood. If in addition to these expedients an eligible plan could be devised for promoting civilization among the friendly tribes and for carrying on trade with them upon a scale equal to their wants and under regulations calculated to protect them from imposition and extortion, its influence in cementing their interest with ours could not be more considerable. The proper state of our revenue has been intimated. This would be still more the case were it not for the impediments which in some places continue to embarrass the collection of the duties on spirits distilled within the United States. These impediments have lessened and are lessening in local extent, and, as applied to the community at large, the contentment with the law appears to be progressive. But symptoms of increased opposition having lately manifested themselves in certain quarters, I judged a special interposition on my part proper and advisable, and under this impression have issued a proclamation warning against all unlawful combinations and proceedings having for their object or tending to obstruct the operation of the law in question, and announcing that all lawful ways and means would be strictly put in execution for bringing to justice the infractors thereof and securing obedience thereto. Measures have also been taken for the prosecution of offenders, and Congress may be assured that nothing within constitutional and legal limits which may depend upon me shall be wanting to assert and maintain the just authority of the law. In fulfilling this trust, I shall count entirely upon the full cooperation of the other departments of the government and upon the zealous support of all good citizens. I cannot forbear to bring again into the view of the legislature the subject of a revision of the judiciary system. A representation from the judges of the Supreme Court, which will be laid before you, points out some of the inconveniencies that are experienced. In the course of the execution of the laws, considerations arise out of the structure of the system which in some cases tend to relax their efficacy. As connected with this subject, provisions to facilitate and taking of bail upon processes out of the courts of the United States, and a supplementary definition of offenses against the Constitution and laws of the Union, and of the punishment for such offenses will, it is presumed, be found worthy of particular attention. Observations on the value of peace with other nations are unnecessary. It would be wise, however, to timely provisions to guard against those acts of our own citizens which might tend to disturb it, and to put ourselves in a condition to give that satisfaction to foreign nations which we may sometimes have occasion to require from them. I particularly recommend to you consideration the means of preventing those aggressions by our citizens on the territory of other nations and other infractions of the law of nations, which, furnishing just subject of complaint, might endanger our peace with them, and, in general, the maintenance of a friendly intercourse with foreign powers will be presented to your attention by the expiration of the law for that purpose, which takes place, if not renewed, at the close of the present session. In execution of the authority given by the legislature measures have been taken for engaging some artists from abroad to aid in the establishment of our mint. Others have been employed at home. Provision has been made of the requisite buildings, and these are now putting into proper condition for the purposes of the establishment. There has also been a small beginning in the coinage of half-dimes, the want of small coins in circulation calling the first attention to the regulation of foreign coins in correspondency with the principles of our national coinage as being essential to their due operation and to order in our own money concerns will, I doubt not, be resumed and completed. It is represented that some provisions in the law which establishes the post office operate an experiment against the transmission of newspapers to distant parts of the country. Should this, upon due inquiry, be found to be the fact, a full conviction of the importance of facilitating the circulation of political intelligence and information will, I doubt not, lead to the application of a remedy. The adoption of a constitution for the state of Kentucky has been notified to me. The legislature will share with me in the satisfaction which arises from an event interesting to the happiness of the part of the nation to which it relates and conducive to the general order. It is proper likewise to inform you that since my last communication on the subject, and in further execution of the acts severally making provision for the public debt and for the reduction thereof, 3 new loans have been effected, each for 3,000,000 florins, one at Antwerp at the annual interest of 4.5%, with an allowance of 4% in lieu of all charges, and the other 2 at Amsterdam at the annual interest rate of 4%, with an allowance of 5.5% in one case and 5% in the other, in lieu of all charges. The rates of these loans and the circumstances under which they have been made are confirmations of the high state of our credit abroad. Among the objects to which these funds have been directed to be applied, the payment of the debts due to certain foreign officers, according to the provision made during the last session, has been embraced. Gentlemen of the House of Representatives, I entertain a strong hope that the state of the national finances is now sufficiently matured to enable you to enter upon a systematic and effectual arrangement for the regular redemption and discharge of the public debt, according to the right which has been reserved to the government. No measure can be more desirable, whether viewed with an eye to its intrinsic importance or to the general sentiment and wish of the nation. Provision is likewise requisite for the reimbursement of the loan which has been made of the Bank of the United States, pursuant to the 11th section of the Act by which it is incorporated. In fulfilling the public stipulations, in this particular, it is expected a value saving will be made. Appropriations for the current service of the ensuing year, and for such extraordinaries as may require provision will demand, and I doubt not will engage your early attention. Gentlemen of the Senate and the House of Representatives, I content myself with recalling your attention generally to such objects, not particularized in my present, as has been suggested in my former communications to you. Various temporary laws will expire during the present session. Among these, that which regulates trade and intercourse with the Indian tribes will merit particular notice. The results of your common deliberations hitherto will, I trust, be productive of solid and durable advantages to your constituents, such as, by consolidating more and more their ultimate suffrage, will tend to strengthen and confirm their attachment to that constitution of government upon which, under divine providence, materially depend their union, their safety, and their happiness. Still further, to promote and secure these inestimable ends, there is nothing which can have a more powerful tendency than the careful cultivation of harmony, combined with a due regard to stability in the public councils. George Washington. Reply from the United States Senate, Philadelphia, November 8th, 1792. To the President of the United States. Accept, sir, our grateful acknowledgments for your address at the opening of the present session. We participate with you in the satisfaction arising from the continuance of the general prosperity of the nation. But it is not without the most sincere concern that we are informed that the reiterated efforts which have been made to establish peace with the hostile Indians have hitherto failed to accomplish that desired object. Hoping that the measures still depending may prove more successful than those which have preceded them, we shall, nevertheless, concur in every necessary preparation for the alternative. And should the Indians on either side of the Ohio persist in their hostilities, fidelity to the Union, as well as affection to our fellow citizens on the frontiers, will ensure our decided cooperation in every measure which shall be deemed requisite for their protection and safety. At the time that we avow the obligation of the government to afford its protection to every part of the Union, we cannot refrain from expressing our regret that even a small portion of our fellow citizens in any quarter of it should have combined to oppose the operation of the law for the collection of duties on spirits distilled within the United States, a law repeatedly sanctioned by the authority of the nation, and at this juncture materially connected with the safety and protection of those who oppose it. Should the means already adopted fail of securing obedience to this law, such further measures as may be thought necessary to carry the same into complete operation cannot fail to receive the approbation of the legislature and the support of every patriotic citizen. It yields us particular pleasure to learn that the productiveness of the revenue of the present year will probably supersede the necessity of any additional tax for the service of the next. The organization of the government of the state of Kentucky being an event peculiarly interesting to the part of our fellow citizens and conducive to the general order affords us particular satisfaction. We are happy to learn that the high state of our credit abroad has been evinced by the terms on which the new loans have been negotiated. In the course of the session, we shall proceed to take into consideration the several objects which you have been pleased to recommend to our attention, and keeping in view the importance of union and stability in the public councils, we shall labor to render our decisions conducive to the safety and happiness of our country. We repeat with pleasure our assurance of confidence in your administration and our ardent wish that your unabated zeal for the public good may be rewarded by the durable prosperity of the nation and every ingredient of personal happiness. Reply given by John Langdon, President pro tempore of the Senate. Reply from the United States House of Representatives. Philadelphia, Saturday, the 10th of November, 1792. Sir, the House of Representatives, who always feel a satisfaction in meeting you, are much concerned that the occasion for mutual felicitation, afforded by the circumstances favorable to the national prosperity, should be abated by a continuance of the hostile spirit of many of the Indian tribes, and particularly that the reiterated efforts for effecting a general pacification with them should have issued in new proofs of preserving enmity, and the barbarous sacrifice of citizens who, as the messengers of peace, were distinguishing themselves by their zeal for the public service. In our deliberations on this important department of our affairs, we shall be disposed to pursue every measure that may be dictated by the sincerest desire, one on hand, of cultivating peace, and manifesting by every practicable regulation our benevolent regard for the welfare of those misguided people, and by the duty we feel, on the other hand, to provide effectually for the safety and protection of our fellow citizens. While with regret we learn that symptoms of opposition to the law imposing duties on spirits distilled within the United States have manifested themselves, we reflect with consolation that they are confined to a small portion of our fellow citizens. It is not more essential to the preservation of true liberty that a government should always be ready to listen to the representations of its constituents, and to accommodate its measures to the sentiments and wishes of every part of them, as far as will consist with the good of the whole. Then it is that the just authority of the laws should be steadfastly maintained. Under this impression, every department of the government and all good citizens must approve the measures you have taken, and the purpose you have formed, to execute this part of your trust with firmness and energy, and be assured, sir, of every constitutional aid and cooperation which may become requisite on your part. And we hope that while the progress of contentment under the law in question is as obvious as it is rational, no particular part of the community may be permitted to withdraw from the general burthens of the country by a conduct as irreconcilable to national justice as it is inconsistent with public decency, the productive state of the public revenue, and the confirmation of the credit of the United States abroad, evinced by the loans at Antwerp and Amsterdam, are communications the more gratifying as they enforce the obligation to enter on systematic and effectual arrangements for discharging the public debt, as fast as the conditions of it will permit. And we take pleasure in the opportunity to assure you of our entire concurrence in the opinion that no measure can be more desirable, whether viewed with any eye to the urgent wish of the community, or the intrinsic importance of promoting so happy a change in our situation. The adoption of a constitution for the state of Kentucky is an event on which we join in all the satisfaction you have expressed. It may be considered as particularly interesting since, besides the immediate benefits resulting from it, it is another auspicious demonstration of the facility and success with which an enlightened people is capable of providing by free and deliberate plans of government for their own safety and happiness. The operation of the law establishing the post office, as it relates to the transmission of newspapers, will merit our particular inquiry and attention. The circulation of political intelligence through these vehicles being justly reckoned among the surest means of preventing the degeneracy of a free government, as well as of recommending every salutary public measure to the confidence and cooperation of all virtuous citizens. The several other matters which you have communicated and recommended will, in their order, receive the attention due to them, and our discussions will, in all cases, we trust, be guided by a proper respect for harmony and stability in the public council, and a desire to conciliate more and more the attachment of our constituents to the Constitution by measures accommodated to the true ends for which it was established, signed by order and in behalf of the House. That has been George Washington's fourth annual message to Congress. You can access this document on the site's timeline, along with viewing many other primary source documents. Please leave a like, share, subscribe, hit the notification button, and comment below what your thoughts about the different issues that Washington brought up in his fourth State of the Union address. Thank you, and see you next time.